Who doesn't love a nice set of Italian kicks? Today we're checking out the Sidi Crossfire 3. So first off, let's talk about the construction of these boots. They're unique in the fact that they do offer a lot of adjustability, but also a lot of replaceability. You can replace all sorts of different panels on these, and you'll see a lot of screws kind of throughout the whole shaft of the boot. Basically from the ankle up, this thing's completely replaceable. And the adjustment is gonna be really nice for people that wear knee braces or have bigger calves, because you can adjust the opening on this boot out quite a bit. Again, it's not something you see on every boot out there. And the amount of stuff that you can replace on this boot is really second to none. So you don't have to throw them in the gutter and go buy another when they get all scuffed up. So most of what you see on this boot is going to be the thermoplastic hard parts, the protective bits. Everything up here is going to be pretty flexible, so you can get good mobility out of it, and things get a bit tougher down in the toe box and the heel. And then on the inside of this, everything that you see that kind of looks like leather is going to be a Techno Micro, basically a synthetic leather that's kind of all around performs better than actual leather. So pricing for these starts at 500 bucks, and Euro size is available between 40 to 50. And you're gonna have 8 color options, which includes this super cool sage green. That's enough about the construction. You can see most of what's going on here. Again, you get all of that adjustment. You got 4 straps here. All of the bits where you see screws and whatnot are all things that can be replaced. This is the TA version, so it's gonna have this This is the TA version, so it's going to have this kind of more enduro specific sole. There's also an SRS version of the Crossfire 3, which has a kind of a molded sole, which has a big replaceable panel in the middle. So once your boots start getting torn up from, sharp foot pegs, you can actually replace this entire section just with screws, much like you can with the other parts on the shaft of this boot. So a quick side-by-side kind of weight comparison for these boots. Obviously off-road boots are gonna be heavier than their street counterparts. And I was actually surprised by what I came up with. I pulled some Alpinestars Tech 10 boots as well as the TCX Comp Evo out of the closet, and wanted to just see how these stacked up. I've always thought these were fairly light boots. Turns out they're the heaviest one out of these 3 Italian boots. Each one of these is gonna come in at 4 pounds, 10.8 ounces per boot. So that's a decent amount of weight. The TCX Comp Evos were just a little bit lighter at 4 pounds, 9.9 ounces. And then the Tech 10s were the lightest at 4 pounds, 5.7 ounces. There is another boot that I have from Sidi called the Atoho, and that one's a little bit more of a stripped down boot. You're not able to replace as many parts and swap things out and get quite the same amount of adjustment, but the Atoho is actually 3 pounds, 15.1 ounces, so it's quite a bit lighter. If you're looking for a lighter boot, generally the most protective or highest end boots of a manufacturer's lineup aren't going to be the lightest, but they will offer the most protection and adjustability. So the Sidi Atohos that I have a 43, and those are just a bit too tight for me. I think 44 across the product range for Sidi is going to be the way that goes. It shows a US 10.2 in these boots, but the sizing is kind of different. Just looking at the other Italian boots that I have in here, they don't have the same sizing from Euro to US conversion, so it's kind of all over the place. But I'm generally a 10.5 in sneakers, and I'm a 44 in these Sidi Crossfire 3s. So I think Sidi also gets a rap for having really narrow footbeds, and honestly, I have a pretty average width foot. I would say that they're snug, but not uncomfortably so. I actually have a pair of Crossfire 3s that I've had for many, many years, and we'll check those out in a little bit. But with those, they're totally broken in. I put a lot of miles, a lot of kind of hard enduro miles on them, and they fit absolutely perfect. And it's kind of like, with a helmet, you want that thing to fit tight when you first get it. So then once it's broken in, it still is nice and snug around your head or foot to keep things safe. So I would say if you do have a wider foot, these might be a bit snug for you, but if you just kind of normal standard foot size, you don't need to get wide shoes or anything like that, I think these will be an okay option for you, because again, they do break in and then they're pretty much perfect. So like I said, these will break in, but there is certainly a break-in period, which I learned the hard way. You should always expect it with, hiking shoes, motorcycle boots, off-road boots, whatever. We'll get into that more in a bit. These boots do break in, and they've actually kind of incorporated a foam around the ball of the ankle and heel to really, it's really tight in the beginning, but then once it breaks in, it kind of forms really nicely to your foot for a more secure fit. I will say the inside of these boots is not nearly as soft as many others. Generally, you're going to be wearing long socks or some kind of legging type base layer or something anyway, but it's kind of like this open mesh, which is nice, for airflow. and whatnot, you do have a little bit of venting, but man, if you don't have thick socks on, or if you're just trying to get these broken in before a long trip and you're walking your dog around the neighborhood in shorts with normal socks on, it's pretty rough on the ball of your ankles. So yeah, this is my second pair of Crossfire 3s. I actually have the old ones right here. These bad boys. So these are the Crossfire 3s that I've had for quite a long time. They're super beat up. I think the only thing that I've had to replace though is maybe like a strap that came off, you know, getting snagged on something and you know, some off-piste riding. So as you can see on the bottom, these older boots are fairly chewed up. So that's gonna be where on the SRS version, it's nice to be able to just pop that piece off and pop a new one in. The TA version is designed to be resolable, but you are gonna have to take it to a cobbler to do that. But overall, they broke in super nicely. Putting these on back to back, the new ones still aren't quite as broken in and they're still pretty tight around my kind of like ankle area. But these old ones, slipped my foot into these, they're in totally perfect fit. They're just really nicely broken in. And if I needed something that I wanted to wear for like 10 days at a time right now, these would be the ones to wear. And let's get into the mistake that I made getting these new ones. For now, we'll just... When I first got this pair of Sidi Crossfire 3s, it was just before the BMW GS Trophy, which this past year in 2024 took place in Namibia. What I wasn't prepared for was the break-in process that these boots were going to take. With the other ones, I used them on random dirt biking trips, just day rides, things like this, you know, here and there. But with the new ones, I was going to be in them for like 10 days straight. Over 1,000 miles. Turns out that break-in process is really important. When I first got these, again, they were really nice and snug around my ankles and kind of the sides of the foot. And they've broken in a little bit over that long trip, but they're still very tight. And even trying to wear them ahead of time, walking around the neighborhood, again, walking my dog in them, and putting as much time in them as I could before that trip didn't really help me. Having to wear these basically out of the box for 10 days in a row, my ankles and feet ended up really raw from not getting a proper break-in. But with how great they fit now, once I've put a lot of miles in them, I'm still very happy with them, and that's why I knew I'd be okay with these. When I first got the older set of boots, one thing that I unfortunately noticed pretty quickly, out riding dirt bikes kind of here in Southern California, got into a little bit of a rut and had my foot in front of the foot peg. So once I kind of ended up having to stop pretty quick, some rocks or something in the path, the foot peg ended up smashing the back of my ankle. And these boots, unlike some of the other boots that have a full shank through the back of the heel here to protect your Achilles, these have a nice soft spot right here, which offers really nice articulation, but it doesn't offer great protection. So I caught a foot peg to the back to the Achilles and ended up thinking that I actually had a fairly significant injury. After weeks of sitting around resting, it got better, but just something to note here. We have the TCX Comp Evo and Alpine Stars Tech 10 right here next to it. These boots both offer this protection on the back of the Achilles that slides up into the boot when it flexes. So there are ways of getting around that. Sidi doesn't offer any protection back there for the most mobility you can get. Whether or not that's going to be a priority for you, that's for you to decide. But other manufacturers do have ways of getting around it. And just while I have these other two boots out here too, you can kind of get a side-by-side comparison of the height obviously is pretty comparable with the TCX Evo, but the Alpine Stars boot is a bit shorter, and like I said before, it does weigh less than either one of these. I wouldn't not wear these boots because they don't have that protection through the back, but other boots do. I would say airflow is going to be just about as good as any other off-road boot. There's not a lot of it. They do incorporate some venting throughout this thing, and again, they've got that kind of like coarse open mesh on the in the foot area, but overall, they're not gonna flow a ton of air. They're not waterproof. Sidi does have offer some other versions of their off-road boots that do have waterproofing now, but as far as their top-of-the-line motocross boot, enduro, whatever, it's going to be the Crossfire 3 from Sidi.